Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Monday, February the 5th. We always want to get together with our good friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda on Mondays. And today we're very fortunate to have him again. How are you, Bill? Welcome as always.
Well, thank you, Silvio. How am I? Well, it depends on what the latest polls show, but reasonably well. Um, we are not broadcasting from New York City. We broadcast from an area north of New York City, but we are looking at New York City, a place now where you can beat up a police officer and be released on your own recognizance.
Amazing. No, that's an
It is.
amazing story. In fact, why don't we go ahead and start there? Because New York City has been in the news for two reasons. The police incident that you're talking about, and now they're going to issue debit cards to some of these individuals, and the mayor says that they're going to save money by doing this. I don't know. Maybe he's right, but I don't think that could possibly be very popular in New York City, Bill.
Well, it probably is not if New Yorkers were honest in the way they answer Pulse's questions, but New York is really the crown of liberalism in the United States. It's the largest city in the country, of course, and is one of the most liberal, and it is falling apart. Now, that doesn't mean everything is falling apart. What is remarkable about New York is that in the last year, serious crime went down, which means the police are doing their jobs, and amazing that they even want to, given the set of circumstances. But the people who aren't doing the jobs, of course, are the people in political control of the city. I think the mayor is trying, but the city council is completely off to the left, absolutely off to the left. They don't care about anything but their left wing vision
Yeah.
of the world. And the city is not coming back the way people thought it would come back. Because how can it come back when people are afraid to walk the streets?
Right. Now, that we'll get to the police in a minute, the incident where the police officers were attacked. But on the debit cards, it may be that it makes sense from a financial standpoint. The mayor keeps saying that they're going to save money. But politically, the idea that you're handing somebody a debit card, particularly someone who just came into your country, um, I can tell you that as an immigrant at one time in my life, we would have never expected, my parents would have never expected us to get a debit card.
No,
I mean, it's like the attitude was totally different. The attitude was, "Hey, thanks for the opportunity to live in the United States, and we'll get to work." Thank you for
that's right.
everything, and we're going to get to work to get our lives started. I mean, that was the attitude my parents had. So when I see this, people being issued debit cards to buy food, I mean, I just think that it's ridiculous. Even if the amounts apparently are going to save money, I don't know how. But the other question I have, Bill, and before I give you a chance to answer, isn't New York City already I mean, not losing money, but aren't they in the red already? So I mean, where's this money going to come from that they're going to issue these debit cards, and they are renewing the debit cards every 28 days or refilling them every 28 days, as I understand, Bill. So where's this money going to come from, Bill? That's
Well,
the
well, it's
question I have.
it's coming from the city treasury. I was reading a few days ago how they have taken schools, emptied them of students, because they wanted housing for immigrants, and let's put it this way, illegal immigrants, and they are giving to these immigrants privileges that American citizens don't even have. Free medical care, this free, that free, the other thing free. It is obviously based on an ideology which has taken hold in the Democratic Party, which is a Marxist ideology. I mean, the press will not even use that word. The press tells us it's protecting us. We're going to protect you from evil by being the neutral observer. They won't even use the word Marxist. They're afraid because if you use the word Marxist, then the left yells McCarthyism, McCarthyism, and they just stand by as weak as they are and watch this happen.
Right.
But yes, the resentments I think are tremendous. I think especially among people in those classes that were making some progress in New York and now we're no
Hmm.
longer making any progress.
Right.
I don't know if the very wealthy people, and boy, New York has some wealthy people, if they resent anything because they don't have to live in that society. They
Hmm.
send their kids to the best private schools or even to other countries if necessary. They can buy anything they want. But to a family or even a single mother who's trying to bring up a child who has really no recourse to anything but public education and the public safety organizations, they are really in trouble, and then they have to pay their taxes, which pays for these gifts for people who are here illegally.
Right. It just seems to me that people, like many people who are getting like food coupons, because they qualify for this program or the other, they must be offended too, because they have qualified for these programs because of whatever income level they're in, and then they turn around, they watch these people get debit cards and get put in schools. I don't know. I'm amazed that you don't have more opposition. Although I did watch a report, and I saw Reverend Sharpton, our friend Reverend Sharpton,
Yes.
and I was very surprised because he used the word invasion, which
Yep.
I thought that was, you didn't do that if you were a Democrat, that you didn't use the word invasion, but he did. He used it.
Well,
He was
he
he was
has his. Go
interviewing
ahead.
a Democrat senator, and he said, this invasion, and I was like, what? He said what? Anyway, but he's apparently not happy either, Bill.
Well, he is the leader of his own constituency, and that constituency, the African American community, is being badly hurt by a lot of this. They're taking jobs that ordinarily would go to other minorities in America. They are getting privileges that nobody else has, and I suspect he's hearing it from his own people that we don't like this, especially well in Chicago. I mean, the African American community leaders are very outspoken about what they think of this whole thing. That they have to pay the taxes in a poor community for people who are here illegally.
Right.
And the although the mayor took the position of the immigrants because the mayor is a good hard leftist, and in
Hmm.
where he comes from politically, the only thing that counts is the party line. So,
Right.
he'll risk his career, but the party line will be protected. It's a terrible situation because you can't imagine public officials so completely going against the public will as we're seeing right now with the immigrant situation. It's
Right.
terrible.
It is absolutely terrible, and of course, it's it, the mistake has been compounded because if you bring people legally into the country, you give them a work visa, a work permit. So they come in, like my parents did, and millions of others have come in. They come in, they pass through whatever process they pass, and then at the end they say, here's your work papers or whatever, your green card or whatever. So the minute you are through the process, you can work. But these people in New York or Chicago, they cannot work legally because they don't have a work permit because that's the way they came in. It didn't
Yes.
occur, it didn't occur to anyone, Bill, and this is what is astonishing to me. It didn't occur to anyone in the Biden administration that if you bring in all of these people into the country in this program that they brought them in, that they were going to run into the reality that they didn't have work permits down the road. I mean, it didn't occur to anybody that would be a problem, Bill. It's amazing.
Well, it didn't because the cities like New York, like Chicago, declared themselves as sanctuary cities and in effect said, "Welcome, come in, we will take care of you." And I guess the people in the federal government said, "Well, if they'll take care of them, let them take care of them." And then when the day actually came for these migrants to use the sanctuary city invitation, it turned out they really didn't have the money for it.
Right. And I just saw a report at lunchtime from Denver where Denver is basically saying we can't handle anymore. I mean, they will turn them away now. They said, if the bus comes, they'll tell the driver to go back,
Yes.
which is, I thought that was racist at one time. But anyway, that's what Denver is doing. And in that report that I was watching, some of the counties around Denver are already saying we're not sanctuary counties.
Right.
We're not part of that deal. And so the whole thing was so poorly planned. And it's just like nobody thought of any of these very obvious things, Bill. It's like, if you invite a bunch of people out to lunch, and then when you get the bill, you go, oh, if I invite you, that means I have to pay. I mean,
Right. Yes.
I mean, it's amazing to me, and that's what I find puzzling about it is nobody had the I don't know the ability to think about any of this, Bill.
Well, and especially when you then go above the level of the city to the state. In New York State, the state legislature is even more left wing than the New York City Council. So they're going along with all this. They don't see any problem with it. I mean, they believe they are forming a new paradise, and it will consist of their constituents, and their constituents will go along. They feel, and to them the real evil in New York City is done by the cops.
Yes,
That's their mentality.
and speak.
Defund.
And I was going to say, speaking of the police officers, Bill, we all saw the video of these two guys, or I don't know how many of them were, but they were kicking the police officer, and I guess they got arrested. And the rest of the story is astonishing to everybody, Bill.
Well, yes, they got arrested. Some of them were arrested for exactly what they did, which was assault on a police officer. Others were arrested for much more minor crimes, and they say, well, we really can't identify with precision the people who actually did this. I mean, aside from the fact that it was photographed from 28 different angles by people with iPhone cameras, but we have to nail this down carefully before we start making charges. Well, they've had some time. They aren't nailing anything down. Now, the district attorney, who is Alvin Bragg, who's also the one who took on former President Trump, I mean, he's strictly a political guy. He's taking his orders, and he is the one who is in charge of the prosecution. I don't know how this will eventually wind up. It may wind up where the right thing is done because they have to avoid a complete political disaster, or it may be that they tell the people of the state, "We're in charge now, and this is what we do,"
Right
and
now,
and you can complain all you want.
well, but I understand that the at least one of the young men, the infamous Finger, the man
Yes,
that I understand that they've left town. That's what we're
yes,
hearing.
yes. They believe they've left town, and they believe they've gone to California, and another workers' paradise.
Right. I mean that this is incredible. I don't know how the people there. I think the people are up in arms, but the problem is this is sort of what happens in a one-party state.
Yes, of
Uh,
course.
that's what I think the real problem is because look, Lee Zeldin put up a great challenge to the governor, but he still lost.
That's right. It's virtually impossible for a Republican to be elected
Yeah,
statewide. I think that will be possible only if the state is in such obviously poor condition that people feel their lives depend on getting rid of the people in power. But that point hasn't been reached yet, not in New York City. Outside New York City, I think the people are still pretty rational. But within New York City, it's just chaos. The worst of the college graduates, they go to these left wing colleges in New York and they think that is the truth, and damage is being done.
yes, terrible damage. And I saw a report today. Somebody was saying some local politician, probably a Republican in New York, was saying that the governor should fire the district attorney. The governor has the
He
ability
has
to
the
do it, I
authority.
think.
Yes,
But all she said, the governor, that is, all she said was that she was going to consider deporting these people.
yes. I don't know if she has that power. She does have the power to fire a district attorney, but I don't know if she has the power to actually deport because the federal government always goes to court and says that is a federal matter. And I
Right,
think it probably is. No, she's Mayor Hochul or Governor Hochul, who nobody's ever heard of, by the way. Even now that she's governor, they still haven't heard of her.
right.
She occasionally shows up on television, but she's in an impossible situation because she is the titular head of a party that is so far to the left that they'd be glad to throw her out.
Right. That's the problem. That's the
Yes,
problem. They'll impeach her. They'll figure some way of getting her out. And it's just tragic to see this stuff. And I feel for the police officers.
absolutely. Oh, definitely for the police officer. They're not allowed to do their jobs.
That's it. That's it. No, it's terrible. Absolutely terrible. Well, let's go to as long as we're talking about the border. How does it? I mean, for people like you who are watching what's happening down here in Texas on the border, yesterday there was a meeting on the border where the governor was visited by a bunch of other governors from other cities.
Yes,
The
or
governor, or the other states, that is, the governor is standing very strong on standing his ground. How does it look from, let's say, outside of Texas? How does this look, Bill?
well, it's very difficult to make a judgment on that because it's the old story. Where you stand is determined by where you sit. For the comfortable person voting liberal in New York, they probably look at this and say, "Shame, shame. We're a nation of immigrants. Why are they not being treated better?" Not that they would ever have one living next to them, but for most people, I suspect that most people in the nation are cheering on the governor of Texas.
Well, what's amazing is that Texas has pretty much closed the border. I mean, the number of people coming in is down to single numbers, like three or something, compared to a much larger number before. But now they're going around and they're going into Arizona, Bill,
Oh yes,
which is really interesting because Arizona, that's a much smaller state, uh, not geographically, but I mean in terms of
population.
revenues and resources. And there, I think that state is going to explode too because they don't have the resources to handle it.
That's right. Well, I think there's an assumption on the part of the federal people who impose this on us that these are states that are ethnic states and that eventually the population will side with the ethnicity of the people coming in. I'm not sure that's true.
Well, especially if there are people coming in from Tequisquiapan or whatever, all these Asian countries or
Yes.
African countries. I don't think that there's a lot of people like that in Arizona to relate to.
No. And what is amazing is how little is made of that issue. That people are coming in from Vietnam, they're coming in from the Middle East. They must. I don't know where they get the money to fly across the ocean and then get into the United States, but I have to believe that there is some very dirty money involved in this, and that some of it may be coming from terrorist organizations. That that we could have another 9/11 just based on the people coming into the country.
Well, that's what scares everybody. That you could have these people in the country who could pull off lots of things, and nobody knows who they are. We don't, all they have is a little piece of paper that says you have to show up to see this judge. I mean, it's just remarkable. I feel angry that our asylum program, which is I always thought was one of the most noble things that the United States
Yes,
did, was to allow people to come in on an asylum basis. I always thought that was one of the most noble things that the United States had,
yes,
and it's been reduced to this insanity. It makes me angry. I mean, because I look, we came here, and even though it was not technically asylum like this, but I mean, we were political refugees,
yes,
and we had to go through. My parents had to go through fingerprints and all that kind of stuff, and I remember all of that being with them when that was going on, and you feel like they're mocking the people who did it the right way, Bill.
Well, that's exactly right, and they are mocking it, the people who did it the right way. I mean, to the left wing, people who observe the law are suckers. They're people who just don't understand what's being done to them, and they don't understand that most people believe in the rule of law because they know that in the end that's what protects them. But look, we've had in the last few weeks in New York, people, the Palestinian crowd blocking very important arteries in the city, arteries that carry ambulances and fire equipment, and just blocking them. Nothing is done. They get a bench warrant maybe, and they don't even show up, and nobody cares.
Right.
And yet you hear nobody speaking out because they're all afraid politically. It might hurt me politically.
Yes.
But the attitudes in the city are beginning to reflect the attitudes of national leftist organizations, which have worked very hard to take over this and other cities.
Well, they've done a good job. I have to, at
Yes,
least they have taken them over. Now, let me ask you to comment on this. I was watching Fox News Sunday on Sunday morning, that show that they have, and one of the reporters referred to Governor Abbott as the most influential politician in the country today because of how he has literally put this topic of immigration on the front page and how much visibility he's getting. He's getting, from what I can tell, the public opinion polls favor what he's doing. First of all, do you think he is influential? And if he is influential, could he be a candidate for president in the event that something were to happen to President Trump, Bill?
Well, I haven't heard his name mentioned in New York. It's there's still that terrible bigotry in New York toward people from who speak with Southern accents, and you don't hear him mentioned. He's not much of a factor here. It would take a while before people got to know him and got to get to realize that he's a national figure. I think it would be very hard for him, but again, you never know. The political winds can shift very quickly, and there is really, despite the presence of Ambassador Haley, there is still not an obvious successor to Donald Trump. She may feel that she's the obvious successor, but she hasn't really won any. I mean, she hasn't won any primaries. She
Right.
always comes in second or third.
And she's from what I hear, way behind in the South Carolina primary. But I did hear a conspiracy theory today, Bill, that the reason that I say conspiracy, I'm being funny or trying to be funny when I say that, that the reason that the Democrat vote was so low in South Carolina, I mean, it was ridiculously low, like 10% of the people voted in that primary, is because a lot of Democrats are going to show up and vote for Nikki Haley.
That's probably true. They're being advised to and urged to. But what state? Let's see now. The South Carolina primary is actually February 24th, but one of the states that voted last week. What was the state that voted last week? That did
New Hampshire
was it?
how
No, no.
quickly
What?
we forget Iowa, New Hampshire.
Then
Was
there
it
was another
Nevada?
one.
Nevada, was it?
I don't. I've forgotten. I've forgotten them already. But the turnout was 4%.
I think that was Nevada. I think I could be wrong on that one, but 4%. Wow, that is remarkable. New Hampshire, I guess New Hampshire or Iowa, one of those two. Then,
Uh, I'll look it up.
yeah.
They're already forgotten. They're it's amazing. They're already forgotten. Four
Well,
4%.
yeah, that is. I didn't realize it was that low, but it wasn't any better than that in South Carolina because I mean, when I saw the little flash coming on the internet that there was, I had forgotten that they had a primary. I thought they were both on the same day, like they usually are. I mean, both parties, that is.
Yes.
But when I kept seeing the numbers, they were saying like 90% of the vote in, and President Biden has like 26,000 votes. And I said, where is this? I mean, what state is this? I mean,
Yes.
are they having a primary in Guam or some other
Well,
little?
primary elections are very distorted because they occur within a party, or at least they're supposed to. From what I understand, some of the states allow people, as you pointed out, outside the party to vote in that party's primary, which makes the primary ridiculous, but is useful for some political purposes.
Right.
And they're not really focused yet on the national election. I don't know if this year they're ever going to be completely focused on the national election, and the reason is that I think people are so discouraged by who the candidates are that they're losing interest in the presidency. It's usually you will see by this time people with buttons. You will see a headquarters. There will be some excitement over one of the candidates, even a candidate who may not be in the lead. You see nothing of that. Nothing.
Right.
There,
Well, you're right because we have a primary here on the 5th of March or the first Tuesday of March. We have a primary here, and no, it seems like nobody seems to care about it.
yes.
I mean, on the Republican side, there's not much going on because you got Ted Cruz; he doesn't have opposition, and you have there are some some state races or local races where there may be some excitement, but it's certainly not at the state level. I mean, it's nobody seems to care that much. But anyway, I just feel that that the people who must be really angry with this lack of interest in politics must be the media, because what are they going to talk about for the next 4 months, Bill?
Well, it is remarkable, isn't it? Because CNN uh, goes crazy for every primary. because that's their stock in trade. That and being anti-Trump. I mean, so if Trump is not in court on a given day and there's no primary in Montana, CNN doesn't know what to say. Now today they have King Charles, the King Charles story, and they'll milk that tremendously. But it's true that I would imagine being a political reporter today is extremely difficult. While it's technically a very interesting race, and the fact that we've never had candidates like this before, on the other hand, the level of contempt by the people, illustrated by the fact that every poll shows that the American people don't want either of these guys to run.
Right.
This is not
No,
exactly a landslide Linden election.
no. This is going to be interesting because you're right. Neither one of these two guys has a lot of support. Uh, they both seem to have their support, and that's it. I mean, there's not too. It's not like Trump seems to be at 45%, and Biden. I don't know what number he's in. I mean, a lot of Democrats don't even want him to run. But I've never seen anything like that before. But I've never seen a race like this too, where we could have from like the 1st of March to the 1st of July, nothing literally going on, Bill.
That
Absolutely nothing,
and
because none
and,
of the primaries mean anything.
and what will the conventions be? What will the conventions be? I mean, the conventions now. This is true. This goes back to my childhood, but conventions used to be so much fun. I mean, there was real competition. Nowadays, everything is decided before the convention, and the convention is a television show. And what are they going to say about Joe Biden? What are they going to say about Joe? Look, the Republican convention may be more fun only because Trump can be fun, but I've never heard anybody say, "Bring on Kamala Harris." You know,
Right. That you don't hear that anywhere.
no.
But between now, let's say the South Carolina to let's say the 4th of July, let's say, the only suspense is going to be who the vice president is,
Yes,
as far as the Republicans. I don't think much else will be talked about on the Democrat side, because if they change anything, it'll be at the convention. It won't be before. But for the next 4 months, I'm just sitting there saying, what is the media going to talk about? There's not going to be a lot to talk about, Bill.
well, the war in the Middle East and the expansion of that war into other countries will probably be their main foreign subject, unless, of course, China makes a move, and that is not something we should be ignoring.
Right,
China is building its strength, but in terms of domestic politics, they'll find scandals, and of course, remember the one thing they do have is the political equivalent of Perry Mason, which is the Donald Trump trials. I
right.
mean, it's
But I read Andy McCarthy today wrote something. I don't know if he wrote it today, but I read it this morning. He wrote it in the last few days, I think, where he doesn't think that these trials are going to start before Election Day.
it's quite
The big
possible.
one that everybody's talking about, January the 6th, the Washington D.C. trial, and he doesn't think that they're going to be starting before Election Day. So we may not even have a resolution. I don't mean the two trials in New York. I'm sure he'll be convicted on those two,
Yes.
but most people look at that and they laugh. But I'm talking about the one out of Washington D.C. or Georgia, or the other one. He doesn't think that they'll be able to get all their ducks in a row to start the trial before Election Day.
That may be true.
And so
Uh,
we may have all of this happening after the election, which I'm sure will be very comical. Bill, you mentioned the war, and we did have a military response to what happened to these three soldiers. A lot of conversation about, was it the right one, was it the wrong one, or it's too much or too little. I always like to support the president when he's defending, when he's using the military, because out of respect to the guys flying those planes and working in those warships, I think we need to be united at a time like this. But I didn't think that they hit the targets hard enough. I like to see them get a little closer to Iran, Bill. I really do.
well, Iran is the one behind this. And what I find rather mysterious is the power Iran has in Washington. There's an Iranian lobby. We don't hear a word about it. I think it is a lobby that has a great deal of influence among the Obama crowd, which seems to love Iran. They want to give Iran every break. It has been a complete failure, but they still want to give it every break. You wonder if money is changing hands, but Iran is a powerful country, and the American press just has no interest in reporting a thing about the influence that Iran has in the United States.
Yes, and they do. I mean, they got a lot of money during the Obama administration,
And a lot more now.
and so I mean, I would think that there'd be a curious reporter willing to look into that. But again, they're all obsessed with Trump. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's the real tragedy of the news media these days. You would think that after so many of them are losing their jobs and so many of them are, so many of these organizations are going down, you would think somebody would say, you know what, maybe if we change the stories that we do, maybe if we had a different game plan, maybe we would save our jobs. But they're all obsessed with Trump. It's just remarkable to me, the obsession
Exactly.
that they have with Trump. I mean, nothing else seems to matter to these people other than talking about Trump. I don't know what they're going to do when the guy finally, if he loses and he goes away. I don't know what they're going to do, Bill.
Well, CNN will have to invent a new villain. I think they're auditioning right now, and
Well, it'll be
with-
DeSantis then, I guess. The
yeah,
new
yeah.
villain will be
But it's
DeSantis.
absolutely true. He's a threat to democracy. Well, I wish that somebody would remind some of the people in the news media that Donald Trump has already been president,
Right.
and he actually has a record that they could occasionally refer to. I mean, this threat to democracy. I didn't see him as a threat to democracy.
I didn't see anybody get arrested
No,
at,
no. But
at these news organizations, Bill.
they believe if anybody criticizes them, the news organizations, that's the threat to democracy.
Yes, but I don't, you're right, but I don't remember, any of these news organizations or any of these members of Congress get arrested after they criticized. I mean, they were pretty rough with Trump, and yet they got away with it. Nothing ever happened. Nothing ever happened to them. But to get back to Iran, I would really like to see something done to Iran because this is just going to continue. If we just, you know, I guess we're hitting targets wherever they may be, but I like to see us maybe sink an Iranian ship just to send a message, Bill.
Well, that idea is being kicked around. The feeling that since Iran is the master behind all these small organizations in the Middle East, why don't we go and decapitate the master? But they then come back with all kinds of excuses saying, well, we don't want to expand the war in the Middle East. And Iran, after all, has a strong military of its own. They will retaliate and it will just enlarge the problem. And, we're not really sure that they ordered these attacks. I mean, we don't have a documented order. Uh, what
Right.
you get the feeling is it's the old guard of the Obama crowd defending its position. No matter what actually happens in the real world, they're going to
Right. No,
defend
you're
their
right.
position.
But my feeling, Bill, is that if you send soldiers into harm's way, that the message ought to be clear that whoever touches these soldiers is going to pay a big price.
That should
That is
certainly
my feeling.
that should certainly be the if not the law of the land, then the policy of the land, and that the retaliation should be extremely high. I mean, not pinpricks. Now, these attacks of the last week seem to have been fairly substantial, but they were again made on the little guys around Iran, not on Iran itself. I think the next time anything big happens, Biden will be forced to do something that
Right.
involves Iran, if only a financial measure.
Right. No, I agree, but he has to because if he does all these attacks and then they come back with more, what that tells me is that they didn't take him seriously. And
Absolutely. Well,
and
that's the key here. Does he have the gravitas? Does he have the image of a man you don't want to cross?
well, that's it. I remember when they shot that contractor in I think Iraq or Afghanistan, and Trump took out this fellow Soleimani, and
Yes.
and that sent a message in the region that hey, he's not going to take out the little monkeys. He's going to go after the big monkey, and
Well,
that
that's it.
changed their attitudes real fast.
And I think it also probably changed the attitude of the people within Iran, who I'm sure are against their government. The government is certainly
Absolutely.
not a popular government.
And you bet China saw that too
Oh
and said,
yes.
maybe invading Taiwan is not a good idea right now.
Well,
And
that is, as they used to say in politics, the big enchilada is China,
right.
because they do have the means to fight the United States.
That's right. They do. And they're investing a lot in their military, and we're having a hard time recruiting soldiers. And they don't have any trouble recruiting soldiers. They just draft them. So
That's exactly right.
that's a real situation. Well, Bill, as always, thank you so much for your time, and look forward to our next get together. And who knows, maybe we'll be talking about migrants again. Do you think that'd be a good guess?
Well, I think that would be a very good guess. I think we'll be talking about migrants and our operations in the Middle East, which seem
Yes,
to be
those are the two
continuing.
topics I think that don't seem to go away. Well, have a great day, and thank you for your time.
Oh, Sylvia, always happy to appear.
Thank you so much. Our good friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda, always enjoy chatting with him and getting a sense of what's going on. And there's a lot going on today. We had a lot on our plates. What's happening in New York with the migrants, what's happening with the police in New York, and then, of course, the situation in the Middle East and on the border. A lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff going on this week. Have a great day, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.